It takes me great pleasure now. I see Dr. Deepak Chopra also has joined. So I now invite Dr. Suhas G. Kshirshagarji to introduce Deepak Chopra. Suhas Kshirshagarji is BAMS MD in Ayurveda. He's an Ayurveda doctor. And I was looking at his profile and was very impressed because we have started a Ayurveda biology program in JNU. It's a very unique program started by School of Sanskrit and Indic Studies. And I'll be looking forward to the insights from you and both Dr. Deepak Chopra also. Dr. Suhas Kshirshagarji has been the director of the Ayurveda Healing and Integrative Wellness Clinic in Northern California, and author of a very popular book, The Hot Belly Diet, where there's a 30-day program that was very important, very popular book that you can see on Amazon. He holds a BA in Ayurvedic medicine and has completed a 3-year residency as an MD with a complemental in the prestigious Pune University. He's a faculty member at several Ayurvedic institutions in India and abroad. And he will be speaking at our conference. We're very fortunate to have him as a speaker on Monday. But right now, I would like to request him to introduce Dr. Deepak Chopra. Dr. Suhasji, please.
Thank you, Girishji. And it was a wonderful presentation from Professor Kapilji also. So once again, namaste, everyone. It's our great joy and honor to be here at the 25th Vedanta Congress. And the theme of this year's Congress is Vedantic approach for health and education. And I don't see anyone better qualified to speak about that, to talk about that, and explain the importance of Vedanta in the current health scenario than our next speaker. He absolutely needs no formal introduction and is one of the most powerful voices in the field of science, spirituality, and integrative medicine, and Vedanta as well. Dr. Deepak Chopra is a perfect blend of a sage and a scientist who has inspired millions for their personal growth and transformation. As a medical director with extensive clinical experience, he has pioneered the very renaissance of yoga, Ayurveda, Vedanta, meditation, and the consciousness studies. Being a clinical professor of family medicine and public health with the University of California in San Diego, he is also a senior scientist with Gallup Organization. And one of the most remarkable achievement, I would say, as an author of 90 books with about 35 New York Times bestsellers. His books have been translated in 43 languages, making Ayurveda yoga a household name. His latest book, MetaHuman, is an international bestseller. Time magazine describes Deepak Ji as one of the top 100 icons and heroes of this century. The World Post, the Huffington Post Global Internet Index of Influential Thinkers ranks Dr. Chopra number 17 in the world and number 1 in medicine. His new company, Chopra Global, is planning to reach out to 1 billion people around the globe. He is a poet, prophet, and the very face of modern integrative medicine, describing Ayurveda, meditation, and yoga to Main Street America with his massive social media presence through radio, television networks. For me personally, Deepak Ji is a mentor, guide, and a perfect role model. I have worked closely with him for over last 20 years. He's not only a brilliant and articulate person, but he's also, as a person I know him, very patient, calm, and always ready for the unexpected. I think that's exactly what the theme of Vedanta is all about. Because when we look at the world, especially in the field of health and wellness, we are slowly realizing that the importance of integration of these ancient sciences to be explained with the modern lingo. And there's no one better than Dr. Deepak Chopra to do that. So let me welcome my dear friend and mentor, Dr. Deepak Chopra. Deepak Ji.
Thank you, Suhasji. It's a great privilege and honor to speak to all of you. And I am very grateful for this opportunity to be amongst all of you August luminaries in the field of Ayurveda, yoga, Vedanta, and much more. So Suhasji, I will ask you to show the slides when we are ready.
Please.
Let me just continue with the introduction for a few moments. I have known Dr. Suhasji for, as he said, 20 years, ever since the days of my own apprenticeship with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And I found Suhas to be very articulate, very knowledgeable. Even though he has called me his mentor, I consider him a mentor of mine as well. So with that, I'd like to share with you some of the insights that are gaining validity and I should say probably the most important science in the world right now is Vedic science, which can help alleviate the suffering of the world. As we look across the landscape today of the human condition and the world condition, we see enormous suffering, but we also see things that we are not consciously aware of or sometimes in denial of. The world is in great danger at the moment. We have extinction of species, we have destruction of the ecosystem, we have mechanized ways of killing each other, modern capacities and tribal habits. We have internet warfare, we have biohacking, we have, what should I say, poison in our food chain, and destruction of the genetic information on our planet. And with all that's going on, including climate change, which is a human creation, we are sleepwalking ourselves to extinction. And this is the collective insanity right now of humankind, and we are asleep. Only Vedanta can wake us up to fundamental reality. And unless we do that, we are risking our extinction. With that, I'd like to share some PowerPoint slides with you to make some very essential points. I begin with this phrase that is familiar to all of you, Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande. As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. As is the human mind, so is the cosmic mind, or the other way around too. As is the cosmic mind, so is the human mind. So this sums it all up. The humans are the only species on this planet that have the capacity of immense self-awareness. And if spirituality has to be defined in one phrase, it would be just this, self-awareness. To find the true self is to be liberated from Maya, or the magical lie that our perceptual activity gives us, both of our body, of our mind, and that which we call the physical world. So with the next slide, I want to share with you some of the most important insights of Ayurveda, which is we are the metabolism of experience. Every experience that we have, every wisp of experience, every memory, every desire, every single karmic event throughout history has actually been metabolized into what we call the physical body and the physical universe. Karma, sanskara, vasana are metabolized as experience, but experience on an everyday basis, we call it both inner and outer. So with the next slide, I would like to share with you that what we call our physical body is a dynamic activity of seeming non-change in the midst of change. Modern science describes this as homeostasis or self-regulation, which is a natural tendency of every biological organism. What we experience as outer life, which is really not outer because it's happening in our formless being, but what we experience as the outer world is the five senses: sound, touch, sight, taste, smell. As you heard earlier before my talk, we go every day through states called sleeping, dreaming, and waking. And of course, breath is a constant. Nutrition makes our body survive. Metabolism regulates everything from entropy to life. We also have an environment in which we experience our existence, and we call it nature and the universe. This is our so-called outer life, Jagat Mithya. But in addition, every day we go through an inner experience. May I have the next slide, please? And that inner experience is our own thoughts, emotions, memories, desires, imagination, creativity, introspection, intuition, higher calling, purpose, dharma, and ultimately transcendence. So this is the metabolism of experience that leads to what we call our experience of life. Life is a continuum of experiences or space-time events in consciousness or awareness or fundamental being. Next slide, please. So these are some of the new issues of science magazines. And it is timely that modern science is now questioning what fundamental reality is, and the fact that your thinking not only happens in your brain, but it is part of a thinking body, which is part of a thinking universe. Next slide, please. And as I've explored the pillars of well-being with Dr. Suhas, these are the 7 most important pillars that I think are important to maintain homeostasis or self-regulation or healing. Sleep, 8 hours of good sleep every day, with at least 30% of it being dream sleep and deep sleep. In dream sleep, we detox the mental body, mind, intellect, and ego. And in dream sleep, I should say, we detox the mind, intellect, and ego, mano, buddhi, ahankar. And in deep sleep, we actually remove physical toxins from the body. And all the latest science shows that lack of sleep is probably the #1 factor for premature death from cardiovascular disease, and also leads to inflammation in the body and many other chronic illnesses. Meditation and stress management in the last 4 decades have become very popular. And today we have the science that shows that meditation, particularly self-reflection, introspection, mindful awareness of body, mindful awareness of mental space, mindful awareness of relationships, mindful awareness of the ecosystem of existence, mindful awareness of awareness itself, and transcendence actually changes our gene activity. Dr. Suhas is familiar and has been a participant in our studies referred to as self-directed biological transformation, where a week of this experience of meditation, pranayama, movement, and yoga resulted in all the genes that regulate biology as homeostasis, all the genes that were involved in homeostasis and self-regulation went up some 17-fold in 1 week. The enzyme telomerase, which influences our biological age at a genetic level, went up by 40%. All the genes that are responsible for inflammation, depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's disease, many types of cancer, autoimmune disease, and premature aging went down drastically during this study. And this study was published in a very important peer-reviewed journal, Nature Translational Psychiatry, and many people have now replicated these findings. Of course, we know emotions affect our biology as well. If you have fear, anxiety, anger, hostility, guilt, shame, mistrust, and depression, which is the divided mind, the conflicted mind, then our biology responds with inflammation and disease. On the other hand, if we focus on divine emotions like empathy, which is feeling what others feel, compassion, the desire to alleviate suffering, and love in action, karma yoga, then our biology responds in the direction of healing. Love actually heals through a phenomenon in the brain called limbic resonance, limbic regulation, and limbic revision, the emotional part of our brain. As a medical doctor 20 years ago, practicing internal medicine, maybe longer, 30 years ago, when people came to me and said they changed their diet and their disease went away, I actually didn't believe them. I had no scientific basis how a sattvic diet could actually heal people of chronic illness. Today, we know that only less than 1% of our genetic information in the body is human. Only 25,000 genes in your body right now are gifted to you by your parents. And it takes only 25,000 genes to make a human baby. But you have 2 million to 20 million extra genes in your gut, in your skin, in all the orifices of your body. And these are microbial genes. And they are as significant, if not more, than the human genes. The human genes and microbiome interact with each other. When we put food in our body, particularly any kind of food, it interacts with genetic information in our gut. And if our food is inflamed, if it is rajasic or tamasic, it will cause inflammation in the genetic information of your body, ultimately leading to disease. And this is today's science. I can say with confidence that if you change your diet to a diet which is one of maximum diversity in plant-based foods, which is sattvic, which has the consciousness of sattva in it, you will change 99% of the genetic information in your body. And the less than 1% that you have, which is human, will also be upgraded in a way that self-healing will be activated. And if genetic information is the printout of the body, is the software of the body, and the physical body is the printout, then theoretically you should be able to reinvent your body by resurrecting your soul. And this is a project that Dr. Suhasji and I have undertaken. We are saying that even in Kali Yuga, it should be possible to live up to 100 years and die in Mahasamadhi. At least that should be the aspiration. So we have initiated something called the Longevity Project, which will bring all the knowledge from Ayurveda, but also modern science to reinvent our bodies and resurrect our souls. Point number 6 is about biological rhythms, which goes back to the original phrase, Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande. We have circadian rhythms in our body that are the result of the earth spinning on its own axis. We have seasonal rhythms as a result of the earth moving around the sun. We have lunar rhythms and we have gravitational rhythms. And Ayurveda has all the knowledge of how to balance these rhythms through daily and seasonal routines. If you are not familiar, Dr. Suhas has written a very elegant book called Change Your Schedule, Change Your Life, which is about biological clocks in our body. Our body is in harmony, or should be in harmony, with cosmic rhythms. The reason we call the universe, it's one song, and our body is dancing to it, even though we can't consciously hear the tune. So congratulations again to Suhasji for bringing this information on biological clocks to the world. 3 years ago, the Nobel Prize was awarded to scientists for discovering biological clocks in our body. And modern science still has to recognize that Ayurveda and Vedanta have had this knowledge for millennia. And the final point I want to make here is, even though we may be in extremely good health and have the best relationships and have all the success in the world, there is something called old age. There is something called infirmity that happens frequently with old age. And there is, of course, death. And this knowledge that human beings have of old age, infirmity of death has led to a spiritual quest. And every religion and every religious experience has been based on discovering the self, or what we call self-realization. If I could identify 3 characteristics of a religious or spiritual experience, it would be the following. Number 1, transcendence and finding an identity which is beyond space and time. Number 2, the emergence of what today are called Platonic values, such as truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, and of course, love, compassion, joy, equanimity. And the final one is the loss of the fear of death, that gets rid of the 5 kleshas, not knowing our true self, grasping and clinging at experience which is transient, ephemeral, ungraspable, dreamlike, the Jagat Mithya, and also the fear of death, which goes away when we find our true self. So those are the 3 characteristics. And for thousands of years, scientists and philosophers have questioned if reality is physical or non-physical. Began in the West with Plato, who was the first idealist, Aristotle, who was the first scientist in a way. I don't know how many people know, but Aristotle's student was Alexander the Great, who came all the way to India and took back with him the knowledge that Ayurveda and Vedanta offered back to ancient Greece, which became the Greek schools of medicine as well. So is reality physical or non-physical? The idea that reality could be both physical and non-physical is called dualism. It's part of Sankhya as well. René Descartes described dualism in the so-called European Enlightenment. It was a convenient settlement that the Pope made with the scientists. As you know, Galileo was under house arrest. And so it was this philosophy of dualism which said, oh, let the scientists take care of the physical world. Let the Pope and the religious people take care of the mental and physical world. But today, as we examine dualism scientifically, it is not tenable. Reality is one entity, is non-dual. And dualism, although a convenient fiction, violates all the laws of thermodynamics. And if I may say so, all of modern science, including quantum mechanics and the theories of Einstein, both general relativity and special relativity, are based on a philosophy of science called naive realism. Einstein was a naive realist. The great Indian sage and poet Rabindranath Tagore met Einstein in 1930, and they had a very interesting discussion on this topic. And Tagore pointed out to Einstein that it was consciousness that conceived, governed, constructed, and became the experience of what we call physical reality. Naive realism says that the world is independent of our perception of it, and that human perception is the only perception that is real, and that the world would exist exactly as it is, available to the 5 senses, even if the 5 senses were not there. And this, of course, totally seems unreal. And today people are questioning what we call realism or naive realism. So if reality is non-physical, then what is it made of? And I go back to Vedanta, Kashmir Shaivism, and aspects of Buddhist teachings as well, which say that reality is non-material. It is derived from pure consciousness, which knows itself as mind, body, and universe, or the experience of mind, body, and universe. And does this matter? I'm using matter now as a verb, not as a noun, because matter is also a convenient fiction. We call it Jagat Mithya. But do we really create our own reality? And how do we do it? May I have the next slide, please? So again, I want to show you some of the discussions that are happening in the field of science. Darwinian evolution is associated with random mutations and natural selection, and has served as a very convenient doctrine in modern science, as opposed to the philosophy of Vedanta, which says evolution, even biological evolution, is guided by consciousness or awareness or pure consciousness. Go back to the previous slide, Suhashi, if you don't mind. Go back to the previous slide. Suhashi, go back to the previous slide, if you can. No, previous. We skipped some slides. Go back before to the science magazines. Just go backwards if you can.
1 second, okay? Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. So if you can go back, and it's nice if I can also see myself. Yeah, keep going back. I think you have to start all over again.
Yeah.
Finish the entire thing and go back to number 1. Okay, this is good. And now go to the next one. Okay, so this is the next one. I want to show you this slide just to see that if you're looking at this picture, you could see a Mexican on a horse and a person by the wayside. That's what this painting could mean to you. On the other hand, you could see an old man with a beard. Which one is it? In reality, all it is colors and shapes and forms in consciousness. The meaning given to this creates our experience of perception. In other words, perception is a learned phenomenon, and perception is totally illusory. After all, our perception tells us the world is flat. Nobody believes that anymore. Our perception tells us that the ground we are standing on is stationary. We know it's spinning at dizzying speeds and hurtling through space at thousands of miles an hour. We see things as solid. We see the body as solid and three-dimensional. But of course, the body is a process, and it's a total illusion because it's part of Jagat Mithya. We see the body as a physical entity when in fact it's a form, it's a phenomenon, it's a perception, it's a modified form of our own consciousness. Next slide, please. Same thing here. You could see a woman with locks, or you could see a mountain, and you could see horses against a backdrop of sky and mountains. Next slide. I will skip some of these illusions in the interest of time. So let's go to the other slides. Skip these illusions. The point is that all experience is constructed in consciousness or in awareness. Today, science calls this quantum entanglement, qualia entanglement. Qualia means quality of experience, meaning entanglement, in that we give meaning to perception, and that's how we create our reality. And ultimately, the metabolism of experience, karma, sanskara, and vasana, as projecting both the pleasure and pain body and the world of illusion, Maya. Next slide, please. So as a result of this, over the years, I've focused on the 8 limbs of yoga, from everything from the first 2, which are about codes of behavior and experience, and then sensory modulation, the 5 senses, panchakarma, adaptogens, detoxification of mind and body, emotional and spiritual intelligence, and healing as the memory of the return to wholeness, and fundamental healing as self-realization to go beyond the 5 kleshas. Next slide, please. So what I said about visual experience is also true about all the experience that happens through our 5 senses. The 5 senses project the physical world and the physical body. And the 5 senses are aspects of consciousness modifying itself as those 5 senses. And so what I said about visual experience is also true about auditory, tactile, taste experience, smell experience. This confederation of perceptual activity, which is a narrow band of human perception, creates the construct of the physical body and the physical world, all part of Maya. And the goal of Vedanta is to remove the veil of ignorance of Maya with the help of Durga and actually experience ourselves as Atman and Brahman. Next slide, please. So physical reality, including the reality of the physical body, is a human construct in human consciousness for a narrow band of perceptual activity. We perceive less than 0.1% of the physical universe and the physical body through our senses, which are a modification of consciousness wanting to know itself as that, Tattvamasi. Perceptual activity is species and culture specific with overlapping cross-species bandwidths of experience. Next slide, please. So if this is real, then meta-human is really waking up from the conditioned mind to meta-reality, the source of all knowing and experience. And the steps of this are as follows: non-reactivity, to take moments to stop, take 3 deep breaths, observe, proceed with awareness and loving kindness. The activation of divine attitudes, gratitude, loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, non-judgmental awareness of external and internal worlds, introception, transcendence, and metacognition, observing ourselves having a sensory experience, intentional perceptual experience, and self-observation, which activates the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is part of the Jagat Mithya as well. Next slide, please. So as we experience these different states, reality is different in different states of consciousness. You heard earlier before my talk of the waking state, Jagrit state, dream state, and deep sleep, Swapna and Sushupti. But then there's Turiya, the experience of self-awareness. There's Turiya Tata, which is the establishment of self-awareness in waking, dreaming, and sleeping, which is referred to in our tradition as cosmic consciousness. There's Bhagavad Chetna, or divine consciousness, seeing the self in the other. And there's Brahmi Chetna, which is unity consciousness, seeing Atman, the self, and Brahman, the cosmic self, as the source of the universe. And this is liberation or freedom from suffering. Next slide, please. Next slide. So meta-reality is a shift in our awareness, in our sense of self. It's a change in emotions, a shift in cognition, a shift in perception, a shift in memory, and leads to insight, or what we call vipassana, and which leads to intuition, vision, creativity, flow, ecstasy, transcendence, loss of personal agency from me to we to infinity. I would like to offer this formula: 0 is equal to infinity is equal to 1, to replace Einstein's formula, which is based on naive realism. And ultimately the loss of the fear of death, because death happens to an illusion, not to the self. Next slide. Current scientific studies are based on matter as the ontological primitive of the universe, a subject-object split, which is artificial, and empirical facts as indicative of fundamental reality, but empirical facts are just a species-specific experience in human consciousness and have nothing to do with fundamental reality. Next slide, please. So at this moment, we're in the process of creating new algorithms, mathematical, correlating biometrics to well-being, everything from brain entrainment to pain management to mental health to precision genomics, stress management, and bioregulation. Dr. Suhasji is a very much part of this ongoing research that we're doing at the Chopra Foundation, which is a non-profit entity. Next slide, please. And these new algorithms are correlating emotional, mental, and physical well-being, so we can all experience what is the ultimate goal of well-being, which is joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, clear, reflective, silent mind, and lightness of being. Dhyan, dharana, samadhi, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, as the prelude to enlightenment. Next slide, please. So this is all I want to say for today, because this is an ongoing process. I turned 75 yesterday. I'm grateful for my good health. And as I look back on my life, it seems like a dream right now. I remember moments of sitting on my mother's lap, smelling her skin, feeling her body, listening to her songs, kirtans. And I can say that has influenced my life, as well as the life of my father, who was a prominent cardiologist, but a very spiritual being as well. So today I offer my gratitude to all our ancestors who are living and alive as genetic information in my body right now. There's not a single thing I can do without the help of my ancestors. And I pay all my respects to them and to the great tradition of holy masters. India has never conquered the world militarily, but today India's knowledge, culture, and spirituality is saving the world from extinction if we wake up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deepak ji. Thank you so much for a very apt presentation after Professor Kapil Kapoor's introduction of foundational terms and concepts. You took us through how to apply these in the modern context, for well-being. And happy birthday to you again. I mean, we should all, as you said, we should aspire to go to 100. So many more, happy returns of the day. Thank you so much for presenting these concepts in today's terminology. And you took us through, how to realize the metabolism of experience. And in that context, you presented karma, sanskara, and vasanas. And you very aptly presented the 7 pillars of well-being and the modern context. And I was very happy to see, that you are referring to Vedanta, Kashmir Saivism, and Buddhism. And you took us through also through the Western concepts of reality and non-reality, and then basically try to establish the Vedantic concepts. And as you would have realized, there's a lot of discussion in Indian tradition on the nature of reality, nature of knowledge, means of knowledge, etc. And I'm sure the rest of the Vedanta Congress will explore these things from the perspective of health, in modern times. So thank you so much, Deepak ji, yes. And I'll be very glad to have you again and again to speak in JNU. And I'm sure you'll be able to certainly oblige us in future. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Girish ji, and thank you for allowing me to share these ideas with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We are so honored. And now